I do a lot of thinking about our business of teaching and learning at Red Deer College, and as I start to evaluate the best way to understand how to move our institution forward, I'm often drawn to the constituent groups that form and have an interest in the success of this organization. So when I look at faculty and staff, when I look at our government funders, when I look at business and industry, essentially the folks that end up hiring students that come out of Red Deer College, look at administration who has the task of trying to make it all work. I find it very interesting because sometimes all of these interests do not align. And because they don't align, it's often frustrating to find ways in which we can serve our learners the very best. And at the center of our business is our students. Teaching and learning is the core of everything that we do. So the challenge of leadership is to take a look at the different constituent groups and stakeholders in our enterprise and find ways to align all of our interests so that we can best serve our learners. We are all about economic, cultural, and social development. And to accomplish that, it's critical that all of these stakeholders align their interests to benefit the students so that we can meet that mandate of economic, cultural, and social development. Sometimes, though, as you watch the behavior of each of these constituent groups, what you often see is a different set of values that come to the forefront. And so as administrators, we look very much at how we can make that alignment happen in a much better way. It's not just about meeting the needs of business and industry, producing workers. It's about creating students who can make a contribution to family, to their communities, and to the work that they do. And so we have to often help business and industry understand that, you know, just because there are these courses in a program that don't seem to fit particularly well with the job, that it's still valuable skills for them to have. And when we look at students, often we worry a little bit about what their interests are, because we all know that students want the best price and they don't want to pay for books and they don't want to pay for tuition. We get that. But we also worry a little bit about how students are using technology, for example, to find the easiest way, the fastest way, the shortcut to completion. They figured out pretty quickly how to do that. So we need to ensure that we can align how we teach and how we deliver and the environment in which we deliver in such a way that engages students to the extent that they become very passionate about their learning and not just, this is something that I have to do to get the certificate. So we have work to do with our students to help them get there as well. And when we look at faculty, for example, often faculty have a lot of expertise in a particular area. They sometimes get frustrated because, as a former faculty member, yeah, I would like every student to be the best possible student to come into my class and to know everything already. But we're teachers, and so the expectation is that we have to help students move from one place to another place and use all our skill and experience to do that. So we have to develop and change, as faculty members, ways in which we deliver programs to students in ways that touch every learning style and ensure optimum opportunity for every student to succeed. And so we have to work with our faculty and enable them to be successful in what they do. We talk about government. Government's interest very often is, okay, what's the best and effective, most efficient way to deliver service to the learners, which is education. And so different governments will value education to different degrees. Some will see it as an expense, others will see it as an investment. We see it as an investment because every single citizen that has an education, that has an opportunity to learn, all the research tells us will make better contributions to their communities and to their families. So we strongly believe it's an investment. Sometimes government doesn't see it as an investment, they see it as an expense. So their behavior often is, let's cut, let's find ways of doing it differently, let's use technology to deliver, and simple solutions often aren't the right solutions. So it's a complex enterprise that we're in as a college, as a post-secondary institution, balancing the constituents' interests, observing their behavior, trying to align their interests so that we all focus on the learner. And I say this all the time. If we focus on the learner, we'll get it right. If we're prepared to do that, we'll get it right. And if we're open to what's best for the learner, we'll get it right. And I think that we have a lot of work to do to get it right for our students. Thinking a lot about this, I was speaking at a conference in British Columbia where I got an idea for my book. And I tend to be fairly controversial and make some comments to my peers in particular to sort of get a reaction. And someone asked me a question afterwards and said that I heard about the university president in Ontario who said, we've got to do less for less. And I said, well, you know what? Actually, we've been doing less for more for a long time. That's the real issue, which gave me the title for a book that I'm writing. So as I started to think about our sector and start to think about the costs in particular, and look at collective agreements for the last 20 years, and what's happened to salaries and benefits, and then look at teaching contact hours and how teaching contact hours over the last 20 years have declined, and how government funding has also declined and not kept pace even with inflation. So put all of that together, and what we're finding out is the student is getting less, and we're paying more for that less. And so it gave me that thought about how we need to take a look at our sector differently if we're going to survive. And there are many who believe that post-secondary education in Canada, North America, worldwide even, is under attack because we can't continue to do more or less for more. That's really the problem. And so I'm doing the research to investigate through looking at collective agreements, to look at teaching contact hours, to look at government grants, and to figure out exactly what has happened in the last 20 years in post-secondary. And I'm looking at Ontario, the British Columbia, and Alberta. I think will give three very good perspectives. Ontario being with a workload formula that's in the college sector that's clearly defines every minute of a faculty member's life, to Alberta, which is a little more liberal in the sense of how we can get work done, a little more flexible, to British Columbia, which has a reputation of having very strong and powerful unions. So as we whittle away at our institutions, and as we start to restrict our flexibility through collective agreements, our ability to reach markets that are, folks that are already working and would like to take classes in the evenings or in the weekends and take programs, and yet our collective agreements restrict our ability to do that. So we start to look at the costs going up, flexibility being more restricted, and if you continue to operate that way and to look out into the future, we can't survive. It's as simple as that. And so I hope that the research that I do and the message that I have will help people pay attention to the things that we need to do to ensure that these great institutions are sustainable in the long term. But we can't continue down the path of increased costs and reduced services. So as I think about the sustainability and future of post-secondary education, and I ask myself, why is it that we continue to exist and in ways in which we cannot defend or even explain our success or even measure our success? What is it that enables us to continue year after year, decade after decade, hundreds of years in a model of education? And the one word came to my mind, and that's monopoly. We have a monopoly on the parchment. So because you have to have that parchment, then people come to our institutions to get that parchment. And we're the only ones that have it. And if we have it and we're the only ones, we can pretty much do whatever we want. And people will suffer through whatever we put them through because they have no choice. So I ask myself as I think about this, what would happen if we didn't have the monopoly? What would happen if, in fact, learning was different? That you just had to prove your learning through modules that you could take from any institution, any place in the world, and put together your own credential. What would that look like? And if we ever figure out how to do that, then that would put into question the existence of post-secondary education in its current traditional model. And that's what I worry about when I think about our institution and what we need to do in our future. We need to think about doing things differently, and we need to ask ourselves, how should we behave if we didn't have a monopoly? What would we look like if people had a choice to come here or not? And what would happen if the parchment, if that piece of paper that's hanging on my wall didn't mean anything? That all that meant was what you could demonstrate that you know and learned and can do. as opposed to here's a piece of paper that says I've learned something. So I worry about that future and what that's going to look like, because it's disruptive it's a disruptive idea, because if in fact technology was able to be used in a way that could create your own diploma or certificate based on modules of learning that you would have to demonstrate, what would be the value of an institution like Red Deer College?